Hi, my name is Harris. I'm one of your podcast hosts. I'm also a lawyer at Treadstone Law. For most Canadians, buying, selling, or refinancing real estate, a lawyer is the last thing on their mind. That's unfortunate because lawyers play a vital role in the process. But what choices do Canadians have? Lawyers can be very expensive. Well, Treadstone Law offers resources to Canadians so they have access to the information they need. Whether you sign up for a live workshop or a mailing list, we cover topics to help you make informed decisions and avoid costly mistakes. It's advice you can start using today, and best of all, it's free. Visit treadstonelaw.ca/MAS offer or click the link below to get access right now. If you're looking to retain Treadstone Law, it's never been easier. Our entire process is online. From completing the retainer agreement to your signing appointment, everything is done from the comfort of your own home. We're your digital lawyers. The best part of it is that you don't pay anything when you're retaining our firm. Visit treadstonelaw.ca/MAS offer or click on the link below to retain us right now. Enjoy the podcast. Welcome to another episode of Hustle and Grit. Today on our podcast, I have Katherine McIntyre. With almost 10 years of mortgage experience, Katherine has seen most mortgage scenarios you can imagine. A mortgage matchmaker, you could call her, ensuring she fully understands your needs, whether you're self-employed, a new professional, requiring debt consolidation, or a savvy investor. She will pair you with the right mortgage for your needs. Welcome to the podcast, Katherine.
Thanks for having me.
Awesome. You know what? I went through a bit of your background on LinkedIn. You've got a storied history, so I just want to jump into it and
Okay.
ask. And we've talked about this before too, but I want to ask how you got into the mortgage industry. What kind of pulled you in? I mean, whether I normally ask whether it's something that you kind of fell into or whether it's something that you knew you were growing up, but it feels like it was something that you kind of moved into later on in your career.
Definitely. If you look at my LinkedIn, my background is not in finance or any related field. I took my undergrad in kin, specializing in sports management. But during my undergrad, I met my husband, and we very quickly had two little kids. So by the time I graduated, we had a toddler and a newborn who was born the month I graduated. So the sports industry is not really conducive of being a mom of young kids. However, we came into a little bit of money just to pay off my student loans. And when I deposited in the bank flagged my account, and they asked me to come in for a meeting, which I found unique. And they were looking at sales opportunities, and they asked me what was going on in my life, what events and goals I had. And I said, well, I've got these kids and we would like to buy a house. And they said, okay, put it in a high interest savings account and come back to us when you think you're ready to be pre-approved. And which really wasn't a lot of advice at all. So my now husband's father had recommended we go speak to a mortgage agent. So we went, and I think it was about 90 minutes we were there. And in that 90 minutes, the gentleman looked at our credit, which was not great at the time. He gave us a clear action plan on how to fix it. There were really just small tweaks that we wouldn't have known, that we easily took care of, that rocketed our credit scores way up. He told us to put the money into a spousal RSP, which ended up saving us a ton of money on taxes, and then we could withdraw it from the first-time homebuyers program. He had us set up RESPs for the kids. He got us to set up wills. He told us pretty much what our next 10 years financially should look like and how to achieve it. And I don't know if you grew up in the same generation I did, but there was a lack of financial literacy. I find not everybody had the same level playing field. Not everybody was told how to manage money, how to manage credit, and also how to achieve all the steps you were supposed to. You were just told to go to university and get a job and save your money. So in 90 minutes, this gentleman totally transformed our lives. And then I wondered, maybe I could do it. So I took the test, and I jumped in the field, and kind of the rest is history.
You know what? I completely agree with you in that you go through high school. I've gone through high school. I've been to business school. I've been to law school. I've never been taught how to manage my own money.
Right?
There's never I've been taught how to manage a business's money, everybody else's other than my own.
It's true. And especially when you think of professional programs like yourself, like going to law school, the banks are really eager to give you student loans, sometimes in excess of what
Yeah.
you're going to take. We
Yeah.
often see lawyers, doctors with really large, over $100,000 in student debt. And yeah, you're going to get a great paying career, but there's also some techniques. Like, it would have been great if we were all taught financial literacy. And I think it's really the foundation to giving people a stress-free life. So that's what I'm looking towards doing, is just helping empower people through financial literacy and using their mortgage to help make them money.
Yeah, no, and to what you're saying, actually, I do remember when you get into law school, every bank wants to give you money. They're
Mm-hmm.
willing to give you money without asking any questions. And then there was a lot of uh, people that I knew that kind of took on that credit. They're like, well, it's free money. And for me, it was actually like similar to yourself. It's like my parents in the background going, no, you're not doing that.
No,
That interest is going to compound, and by the time you get out, you're going to have a mortgage. Why do you want to start off your career with a mortgage? It's the worst thing you could do, because now
exactly.
you can't like move around. You can't figure out what's a good job. You have to get a job to make sure the bills are paid, as opposed to anything else.
Exactly. And you know what? It's okay if people don't know. Really, I have built my knowledge base on what the mortgage industry and education has taught me, but also I'm very fortunate. Every day I see multiple people's finances. So we get to see what has worked for some people, what they're
Yeah.
doing, and you get to really put all those strategies together. Um, and use that to help teach others. So that's really a big core component to my career, is helping people navigate it, whether they're just trying to get into a house, they're in a house but they still have a lot of consumer debt, or really they're just looking to scale back on what they're working. Like, do you want to leverage that money to get a second source
Mhm.
of income so you can relax and spend more time with your family?
No, and that's also one of the top reasons why whenever somebody comes to me and says, you know what, I'm looking for a mortgage, do I go to a bank? I always recommend them checking out a broker first. Not that I have anything against the banks. I work with the banks all the
No,
time.
so do
And
we. The banks are
yeah,
great.
yeah, but it's just that they have a different business model, right? Their business model is people maybe who have all that information or have great credit scores, and that's not everybody. That's far from everybody.
Hmm.
I think that to me, even if you do have a great credit score, even if you know what you think you're doing, I still recommend a mortgage broker, just because I'm here, I'm talking to you. You can go through my life history, just like your mortgage broker that your
Hmm.
dad had recommended did with you. That happens with everyone all the time when they're going to a good broker. They'll go through everything, and then you know what? Life happens. If my kid goes off to college, I need to get a credit line. I need to buy a second home, whatever it is, investment property. You know my financial position. I'm not just getting another mortgage, and so you
Exactly.
can plan that entire situation out.
Exactly. I always say if a banker's good at their job, there's a good chance they're not going to be in that same position when you are ready for your renewal. If I'm good at my job, I'm going to have you for life.
Yeah.
Um, so, the other thing, just to further touch on that with the current economy, the bank has a profit model, and the bank's employees are employees of the bank, and they have to follow that. So an interesting fact is, right now, because rates are increasing, we're seeing banks hold off on sending the renewal letters. So if your renewal's in September, good chance you haven't even got your renewal letter yet, because they're waiting to the last minute to secure you at the
Mm.
highest profit. Where during COVID, when rates were dropping, we were seeing people getting renewal letters up to 6 months in advance. So it's really interesting to
Oh wow.
see how that's playing out.
I didn't know that.
Yeah.
But would you be able to then get a if somebody's up for renewal in September?
Hmm.
And this is a completely different
That's
question now,
okay.
but I'm interested now. Would you be able to get the a rate secured now for September?
Definitely. So we can, without touching your current mortgage, we can lock in a rate 120 days before. So we normally say we would like to start looking 6 months in advance, just so we can double check your finances, make sure you're ready. If we need to tweak anything, we can. And then right at that 120-day mark, we'll lock you in. Are we going to fund by then? No, we're just securing the rate until your renewal date so you don't incur a penalty. Now, if we see a trend, we saw a lot of clients this year with rates increasing that were willing to pay the penalty to lock in earlier, just to kind of hedge their bets on that. So it's
Hmm.
just, that's a case by case scenario, but it's definitely worth looking at.
Oh wow.
Yeah.
So I mean, that's one of the other things too. I mean, I feel like with the banks, there's definitely the scenario that you're talking about. There's also the fact that with a mortgage broker, you're dealing with several different lenders,
Hmm.
and you can look at my life situation, what I want, and you can actually get me a mortgage that's going to be good for me today and tomorrow. It's not something that's like, you know what, you're one and done, and then if I need to change it up, like what I'm thinking about. Whereas I feel like with a bank, again,
Hmm.
they've got great products. I'm not hating on them, but it's more like they got a shoe size 10 and a 12, and if I
Yeah.
if I wear an 11, they're gonna give me a 12. They'll be like, it fits, it's good, goodbye. Right?
I
Whereas I need the 11 to walk properly.
I think that was one of the best analogies I have heard. Um, Everybody comes in and their number one question is, well, other than can I be approved, is what's my rate going to be? But realistically, if you're a first time homebuyer with 5% down, I already know in my head probably the top three lenders I'll put you with. And because they're
Yeah.
great products, they have a free home warranty, really low penalties if you break, which first time home buyers, you normally break that mortgage within 3.5 years. So I know who's going to go there. Now, if you're in the middle of your life, you're in your second house, you have kids,
Mm.
we're doing okay debt wise. We're probably going to put you in a multi component product, which sets you up for success down the road, but doesn't give everything immediately accessible to you so that you can rack up that debt. And
Yeah.
then once you're hitting retirement, everybody wants to pay off your mortgage. I definitely never recommend paying it off in full, which you probably could touch on because you don't want that title free and clear. You always want something secure against it because you kind of become more of a target for title fraud. So we normally just leave even a line of credit.
Yeah.
And the great thing is because when you're in retirement, most of the time, even if you have a pension, your income has taken a serious decrease. Having
Yeah.
that already open, you've already qualified for it. It just sets you up if you needed major renovations to the house to maintain living in the house for healthcare. If you want to help a child, there's so many options there, and it's just there. It's set. You don't have to think about it again.
Yeah, and
Mm-hmm.
then what you've just said is also another great example for that is if you're like going to the banks. I'm really hitting on the banks today. Well, I'm
We
not.
like and we
Yeah,
like the banks. Some of those products I
yeah,
was talking about are the banks, but you just
yeah.
want to make sure you're getting it
But
recommended for you.
essentially, you're working. I mean, you can get mortgages from the biggest banks too, and essentially, you're working for the banks in that you are helping them match the best clients. Like you said in your bio on your website, you're a matchmaker. So
Yes,
it's more like you're trying to find the best lender with the best borrower, and you're
that's
not trying to see what works. You're trying to find what's going to be a healthy marriage and it's going to stick around.
that's right.
So yeah,
We're
so it's
we're
like
the e-harmony of finances.
yeah, no, and then it's better than so with a lot of people. If you're trying to, first of all, even with me being a real estate lawyer, I'm on the last leg. I see some of this stuff, but I'm gonna be the first one to say I don't understand everything about a mortgage. There's no way. There's no way I can know that because I'm not looking at the financial side. I'm not working with the
Mhm.
banks. You are, right? So I would naturally be relying on a mortgage broker. And I'm gonna be coming to you and saying, hey, listen, like this is what's going on. What do I need to do? And
Mhm.
for somebody to find out what they need and then understand what's out there and then go to several different banks to try to build a relationship to find the best product is a very painful task, and it's something that I don't like. Ultimately, I don't think it's going to be that fruitful. Whereas if you already have managed relationships with the banks, you know what their risk tolerances are, you know what kind of profiles they're looking for, what's best for them, what's best for the borrowers, and you can match that up fairly quickly. Like you just said, if somebody comes in first time home buyer 5%, you already know which banks you're going to be looking at. You're not necessarily saying, I know the one bank. You
Yes.
just know that, you know what, based on the profile, I need to know a little bit more information to figure out from this category who they're going to be matched up with.
That is absolutely correct. And just from the first time we spoke, that's something I've really admired about you, is that you know your career inside and out, and you know your side, the legal side of it. But I do think it's really important for clients to remember when they're looking at important decisions like your mortgage, it still is the largest debt you're going to incur. Make sure you're getting the appropriate advice from the appropriate people. For example, some of our lenders, they do come with a lot of extra paperwork, and on the legal side, the law clerks sometimes they don't like that. But at the end of the day, it was a better product for the client based on their needs and profile. As where I'm not going to advise on which title insurance company to get, because that's not my particular. So I think it's important to clients to remember to trust their professionals they're working with, work with really good professionals, and listen to them, because they're still going to be getting mortgage advice with the current interest rates from Uncle John, who had a 20% mortgage in the 80s, and it's not necessarily going to be relevant to their specific situation. Uncle John doesn't know everything about their finances. So
I mean, even from 5 months ago, the market's changed so much. So somebody getting a mortgage 5 months ago is not going to be able to help you today. Forget about 5 years, 10 years, 20 years ago.
exactly.
So I just feel like it's just changing so much.
It is.
So what is it like working with you? Just give me a rundown of, if I want to work with you for my audience, do we give you a call? Do we send you an email? Do you work in person? Can we do everything over webcam? Is it a digital firm? Like, what is it like working with you for a mortgage?
For me, my biggest thing is I want my clients to feel comfortable. So I am very adaptable. Normally, when you want to work with me, you can reach out any method, whether it's social media, email, you can send me a call. And what we're going to do from there is we're either going to talk at that time or we're going to set up a call. And during that discovery call, that's where I get to learn a little bit about you. We normally do this one on the phone or Zoom, just because it's a lot of just collecting personal data. We have an online application that we can send you to if you prefer that, and then we do the follow-up, just so that way we know you're not just putting an application in and I'm telling you, because I really can't get your needs analysis from that. Even a quick 5 minutes, I can find out more about what you're looking for. From there, we work on the back end, we get you pre-approved, we find the options, and we're going to make recommendations for you. We're going to give you 2 or 3, maybe 4, depending on the scenario, recommendations. With what our preferred one is. But at the end of the day, we always say, it's your mortgage. You have to live there, you have to pay for it, and you have to feel comfortable with it. So we'll tell you the pros and cons, and then you will decide. Now, if it's a pre-approval for a house, that's your shopping time. That's when you get to go work with your realtor. We work really close with the realtors. We insist that we're in communication with them, because like you said, we're in a shifting market. Last year, you had to go in firm with no conditions, which was a huge liability. But if you wanted the opportunity to buy a house, you needed that. Now you have the chance for conditions, but we still want to make that condition period as short as possible so that you have a more competitive bid. So we work really close with them. And then once the deal goes live, or if you want to come in for a pre-approval meeting, that's when we are going to do a Zoom, or you're going to come into the office in person, and we're going to go through all your options. And this is also when we get into what term are you going to take, what payment frequency, what do we think about paying property taxes with your mortgage or not, and all of those items, so that you know the ins and outs, so you feel comfortable when you get that mortgage statement. And from there, we just collect documents. And on closing day, we follow up with the lawyer. We make sure they fund. But pretty much, it's pretty easy now. We're pretty fortunate. COVID allowed our industry to move a lot more digitally, because it's more efficient, honestly. If I can meet you on Zoom right now, you're in the comfort of your home or office, you don't have to leave. You can do it on your lunch break, you can do it on your regular break, and it's so much more efficient. We can help more people, and we also can have more time to have our eyes on your file at the office, so things are getting done quicker.
Yeah, I mean that's the thing. Like I felt like before, if with any kind of even with our signings and stuff, you have to spend half an hour on the road, come in, sign, and then leave. And
Yeah.
for us, we could never ever do it over webcam. We had to see the person in person for the signing. But because of COVID, that stuff changed.
Mm-hmm.
So, but has anything else? Has your process changed? Has your recommendations changed for those who are kind of going out and buying a house? Whether it's first time, repeat, has it changed since like 6 months or last year? Because last year it was crazy. It was like you said, no conditions, and you just kind of had to go in, throw in your offer, and then hope for the best in a lot of ways. And you needed to make sure that you spoke to your mortgage brokers ahead of time and got as much information. And there's only so much the mortgage brokers could do. It's not like they know that your property, what you're getting into, and it's going to be approved 100%. But they could do a lot of due diligence ahead of time and help you kind of out on figuring out whether, like, how you should be going in. Has that changed now? Do you still recommend people coming in? Do you, like, what's your kind of stance on that?
We, our process hasn't changed that much. I
Mm,
think we try so hard to be cautious but on your side, meaning
yeah,
we have to think worst case scenario what's going to happen, but we're also working for you and we need you to get a house.
yeah,
So we have to tell you what the liabilities are for going in finance free, like with no financing condition.
yeah,
But we also have to be able to tell you what the alternatives are, what the other options are. Now, if you were going back a year ago, we weren't really concerned about appraisal values. Appraisal values were coming in great,
yeah,
because it was appraisal values, although they look at the cost of the home, they take into account comparables as well. Now, right now, and we would often, you didn't need to get that appraisal right away because you weren't concerned. Now, every day you wait to order an appraisal, there's a chance it's going to come in lower.
yeah,
So
yeah,
there's a lot of different factors there. We really want to make sure we can get an appraisal in the financing condition if we're concerned about it, if we think we only have one or two lenders to go to. We're also seeing, and maybe you're seeing this, is the private lending space is changed dramatically over the last 2 months. Private lenders, we were having them lend up with as little as 5% equity in properties during COVID. They are really scaling that back. And a lot of private lenders are scaling back just lending at all, which
yeah,
which is making it a little tougher because we do use a lot of creative financing as well. And when you think about it, people who have funds to lend out privately, they're normally diversified, and a lot of them have money in the stock market that they're not willing to take out right now because it's in a down market.
yeah, yeah,
So some of that, but basically for recommendations, our process is still the same. And what we're telling clients is just to stay in constant communication. The things that have changed are really more for us to worry about on the back end for timeline, but they're not for the clients to stress about. We're still going to advise them correctly, give them appropriate timelines, tell them what the alternatives are, because there's always contingency plans. That's the great thing about being a broker too. If you go in and a bank comes back with an appraisal value we don't like, we can technically send it to another lender and get another appraisal.
yeah.
And sometimes that's all it takes to get a deal approved.
Yeah, and appraisal, like appraisers, I feel like it really just depends on their outlook as well. Some appraisers, like, and to what you're saying, we did see some cases where people felt like, okay, we could take some time getting it appraised, and when it came in light, and then now they're trying to find private money, they can't find private money, and there's all these other issues that they're kind of juggling with, which is why, like, my kind of recommendations always been that I feel like a mortgage broker is more important than the realtor. Not to piss off any realtors. Realtors do a great job too,
They do a
but
great job.
yeah, I mean, and they're helping you find a house, and it's their kind of, again, it's just where is your the professional that you're working with. There's nobody who's doing everything. You've got
Mm-hmm.
several people, and you got to understand what you can lean on them for and what you can't, right? And what they'll kind of understand. So, am I gonna find what, like, the best house like the GTA or in Ontario? No, I don't know like where everything is, but I can tell you like the title and all of that stuff. So
Yes.
with I find like you got to talk to the brokers first, because you need to know what you can afford
Mm-hmm.
and what your entire plan is, and then you go to a realtor and say, okay, this is how much I can afford, and this is how I want to go out. The thing is even now I feel like a lot of times people are like, well, I could put a financing condition. If it doesn't work out, it doesn't work out. But the point is, you're wasting time. You
Wait,
don't want to waste time,
very much
right?
so. And some people, our industry, much like yours, COVID, when it hit, we saw a huge spike in business. And in
Yeah.
terms of volume, real estate became a really hot topic. And I know, speaking to my Scotiabank underwriter, I think within the first year, they were doing 300% the volume they were right
Oh
before
wow.
COVID. And we were also losing staff. People were working from home, so there's additional stresses. You have your kids, your pets, everything there. The banks didn't have the capability to bring in as much staff and train them. So now
Yeah.
we're dealing with understaffed. People are taking stress leaves. So our industry, I felt like, was running on a hamster wheel for the last 2 years.
Yeah.
There was so much thrown at us in terms of volume. So when you're waiting until you get a financing condition to apply for financing, some people and some banks are still catching up. So it might be 2 to 3 days just before they look like they get your application done. And depending on what lender, right now, there's certain alternative lenders that are still about a week away from approval. So depending if you're a person and you fit there, your business for self, I need that one
Mm.
lender based on that geographical
Mm-hmm.
area. Well, we just wasted our financing condition. And the financing condition, if you don't meet it and you ask for an extension for a legitimate reason, great. But if you're just because your timeline wasn't set up properly, that reflects badly on the realtor. The other realtor or the seller might get a bad vibe from it. So
Yeah.
you might lose out on your opportunity for that property.
Yeah, no, and if the thing is if even if you have a good reason, sellers are always going to be like, you know what, just because I'm giving you a chance, I don't want another serious buyer not to give me the house for the price that I asked for. So that's
Exactly.
always a risk to take.
Especially right now, people, we talked about it on the phone. There's people right now, it's a change market. It's completely different than it was 6 months ago.
Mm,
And when they get that offer, they're not sure if there's going to be another offer. So
yeah,
if they see two and you're taking a long time, they're
yeah.
probably going to go with the one that's ready to go.
Yeah, no,
Mm-hmm.
definitely. And I feel like with banks, um, and the interesting part, the entire economic cycle that we kind of went through over the past 2 years, where when COVID hit, everybody said the market was going to go down, but it's going up. And now nobody really expected in January of this year that we're going
Mm-hmm.
to be where we are today. So my
Exactly.
recommendation, and this is more now moving on to like the market side of things,
Mm-hmm.
when people are like, you know what, I'm holding up out to see whether I can, we're gonna get the bottom of the market, and then I'm gonna buy a house. I'm like, you know what, when you know where the bottom is, that means you're not in the bottom anymore. That means it's going back up.
That's right. That is a really good way. You can't time the market. If anyone could, we would all be rich.
Yeah,
You can't time the market, but you can control your time in the market. And real
yeah,
estate is a long-term gain. If we went back and asked our parents if how much they bought their first home for,
yeah,
that number is always out, just astonishing. So it's just about getting in. And right now, I think is probably one of the most prime times I've ever seen in my career for buying a house. Even though variable or rates are higher, you can always go with a variable rate, which with the cycle should go down once inflation is under control. Um, but you're in a market where people are desperate to sell. You
yeah,
have advantages. We've even seen some realtors in town are offering cash incentives towards your closing costs. You can have a financing condition. You can get a home inspection. And those things, I think, after the last year, we're realizing how important they are because we saw some people get in some tricky situations by
yeah,
waiving those. So I
yeah,
think
yeah,
right now is a great time because I would rather buy a home for 60, 70,000 less um, and pay a 1% more in interest than to pay to reverse.
yeah.
A lot of
No,
our investor clients with multiple properties, they normally use alternative lenders anyways once they get to a certain point.
mm-hmm.
And they know and alternative lenders are typically a little bit higher in interest rate, shorter terms, and they normally come with a lender setup fee too. And investor clients know the value of real estate is more important than the cost of the mortgage because they still know they're going to make money on that property.
Yeah, no, I find it funny that like again, like last year when people, or even earlier this beginning of this year, when you had to go in and you're like going in blind, no conditions, and you're trying to get, like, you have to put in an offer that's above the listing price and pray to God that it gets accepted. Everybody's kind of jumping in, and now when you can put in that condition, the appraisal condition, the home inspection condition, whatever condition you want, um, at that point, people are kind of going, "Whoa, wait, what's going
Yes.
on?" When now
Yes.
it's the time, now is the time to go, because I also feel like the price is going down
Hmm.
is solely a function of interest rates. The prices aren't going down because there's not enough jobs. There's enough jobs out
Hmm.
there. There's enough. It's not going down because there's too much supply. We still have a supply shortage. The only
Yes.
reason it is because of interest rate. And as soon as those interest rates turn around, which they always do, the house
Hmm.
price is going to start lifting with it.
Exactly. I think now is a better time than ever. I have investor clients who are coming to me and they might have a 2.5% interest rate on some of their rentals. And they're like, refinance it right away. We want as much equity as we can so we can acquire as many properties as we can
Yeah.
because they are just waiting. I know in London right here and now, I believe we're about 70 grand lower in the average sales price than it was last month, which
Oh
is
well.
huge. But that's looking at the average as opposed to the
Yeah.
HPI. But we're still up 10% from last year. And most of the time when I, when
You
I,
see, it's a
yeah,
silver lining right there. Yeah.
and when I run my numbers for clients, I only ever use a 3% appreciation number because that is a very nice conservative appreciation. That's
Yeah.
typically a lot lower than the GTA sees, and it's actually lower than what London has seen historically. But it's a nice number, and it still shows how profitable real estate can be.
Yeah, no, and I feel like when you're looking at real estate, like you're day trading with the stocks going up and down, like you're gonna be panicking every single day. Whereas, like Warren Buffett says, if you think like you're gonna make money off of a stock over the next like day or two, you're gonna be just looking at like whether it's going up or down. But if you know it's a good company and you know that everything is working out well, if the stock price goes down, you'll buy more of it just because you know now you're getting a cheaper deal or cheaper price for something that you always already wanted. So the house stayed the same. Just because the price is going up or down from last year to today, these houses, it's not like the house has changed because the interest rates changed. So if you wanted it
No.
last year, chances are that it's still a good deal this year because over the next 10, 15 years, it's going to go up in value. And then
Hmm.
there's other costs. Like if you're looking at it from a cost perspective, you've got your interest costs fine, but you've also got like the quality of life for yourself, your family, all of that. That
Yes.
makes a huge difference.
It does. I love marketing. I spend a lot of time on marketing in my business and researching techniques and client what they're looking for. And I think if you compare the market a year ago to the market now is a much more logical choice.
Mm,
But you can see there, that's the fear of missing out. Everybody was in
yeah,
panic. Everybody else is doing it. So people were just jumping and bidding
yeah,
and it just really goes to the human psyche and how we are really susceptible to those things. But work with a professional who can show you the
yeah,
numbers. And the one number that's really scary is the cost of renting.
yeah,
Renting right now is very difficult. I feel very bad for renters. You see single income families with children, and the price for them to rent sufficient space for their children is crazy. And the also the security too. We're seeing a
yeah,
lot of landlords are they're tuning into the increased prices and they're selling. And if they're selling and somebody wants to own or occupy that home, that tenant no longer has a place to live. So
yeah.
I think another thing to look at in affordability and with interest rates being higher, it's still your house. You're still building equity and you have that security that you know you can live somewhere.
Yeah, and you've also like when you buy into a house, more or less you have kind of fixed in your rent. If nothing else, if you think that it's all going to hell, you fixed in your rent, right?
That's right.
Which is not, and I don't agree with that. But in the chance, and when it does turn around, you'll see that you're building equity. Whereas when you're renting, I mean, if there's everybody is not if there's not enough people buying, there's more people renting. If there's more people renting, there's higher demand. There's also all these rental properties have mortgages on them, so there's the interest rate is going to affect your mortgage as well. So I mean
Mm-hmm.
your rent, sorry, as
That's
well. So
absolutely
it's going up one way or the other. So
it.
my
Yeah,
yeah, sorry, what were you gonna say?
it definitely is. And um, one strategy I find a lot of people are still, they say, well, I can't get what I want with how much I make. And I am a really big believer that real estate can create wealth over time. And I'm a huge
Yeah,
pusher almost not to buy the perfect house for your first house. Buy something small, buy something that's
yeah,
going to become a great rental property, because you have that benefit of putting as little as 5% down on a property you are going to occupy. So if you buy a home that might just not fit all your needs, that's great. That's even better. Buy something that's going to cash flow as a rental property, live there for a few years, maybe fix it up, make it a little nicer, and then refinance that with the money you take out. We'll buy a house that meets more of your needs. And now you also have a secondary income that's building appreciation, increasing your net worth, giving you a ton of write offs. There's so
yeah,
many benefits. So I
yeah,
think when people are nervous to leave the rental market because it doesn't meet they can't afford what they want, I said that's even better. You look at it as
yeah.
an opportunity.
I mean, your first house definitely shouldn't be your forever house. It's like if you waited that long, there's
Yes.
something wrong.
Yes, exactly.
so,
Um,
so, yeah.
oh yeah,
So
go
what are you
ahead.
gonna say? No, I was just gonna say, like, as a last question, to wrap things up, are you when somebody comes to you, and this is the age-old question, and I want to know if like anything's changed. Are you recommending fixed or variable?
Variable. Especially right now. And I do have some clients that during the peak of COVID, we recommended a variable. Um,
Yeah.
and now, with the way rates are going, they're saying, why did you recommend a variable? But it's really easy to forget that there's so much more than rate. With the increased equity that people were experiencing in their homes, a lot of them are going to tap into that. I
Mm,
always, if you are likely going to want to borrow against your house again, we're going to recommend a variable. It's only 3 months interest penalty to break.
mm-hmm.
Um, Fixed rate mortgages can come with an outrageous penalty. You, as a lawyer, you
Yeah,
see
I
lots of
seen it.
discharge
Yeah,
statements. And
it's insane.
when we say big penalties, sometimes $10,000 is a small penalty. Like there can
Yep,
be
yep.
some
I mean, the
really.
average, just for context for those listeners out there, the average that I kind of see is 30, 40,000. We've seen them go up as high as 80 to 100,000, but the average is around 30, 40. That's just a very common number. 10 is rare. 10
Yes.
is 10 is rare.
So we're definitely still recommending variable for the majority of clients. Take, for example, if you're a first time home buyer, mom and dad have to go on title co-signing. They're
Yeah,
nervous about getting off, especially in the increasing, we're still seeing increased values, increasing values. Let's put them on a variable. That way, in 2 years, we can refinance, take them off, and we can also then we can spread out your amortization to a 30-year amortization and give you a better monthly cash flow.
yeah,
So there's a lot of opportunities there. And variable also, again, it's reflective of prime. So yes, it's going up, but they're predicting within 12 months. I believe they declared July 28th, the US is officially in a recession, and we aren't too far behind.
yeah,
With a recession, the economy contracts, people stop spending, and then the Bank of Canada and the federal government, they will then lower prime lending rate,
yeah,
to try to stimulate that again. Canada's economy is very multifaceted. Like you said, we have the benefit, we don't really have a lot of unemployment right now. We have a huge housing supply demand, or housing supply, or demand for housing supply.
yeah,
We're way behind on skilled labor, and we do have a really great immigration plan that's going to bring in a
yeah,
lot of newcomers to Canada, but that's not going to help our housing supply issue. So it's a very multifaceted problem. It's not overnight things that are going to happen, but for the long term, historically, over the last 20 years, can throw a dart at almost any time. And if someone took a mortgage starting on that date and they took the variable over the fixed, they would have won on interest alone, not even taking into consideration the penalties.
Yeah, I think when you look at it from like a for 1 month, maybe the fixed would have outperformed the variable, but over a 5 year term, variables always outperformed.
Mm-hmm.
It's just that people feel cringy, like, oh my god, when they hear like news, like it's on the news all the time, the sky is falling.
Yes.
Then you're gonna feel like, oh my god, it's just gonna keep going to the moon, and I'm gonna lose my house. But that's not the case. And in fact, there's analysts who are predicting, I think, these are, I guess, I don't know whether it's pessimistic or optimistic, but as quickly as Q4 of this year or Q1 of next year, the interest rates are going to be they're going to begin to bring them down, because the market's it's not in a good position right now. And it's not just us. I mean, if you look at the states, when there's reduced demand, it's not like our demand in terms of houses. People, I think, compare price dips on houses with the states. Markets are completely different over
Mm-hmm.
there. When your house goes down, they've got they've got no supply issues.
Mm-hmm.
And often enough, it's a function of interest rate, but also salary and income and jobs and all of that. We don't have that issue here.
No, no, I think that's a really good point. And just to circle back, talking back when we were discussing how the banks are profit driven businesses and they
Mm-hmm.
advise their clients accordingly, a lot of news articles have analysts that are the chief economists from the top five banks. So it is
Yeah.
a proven fact that they are going to drive fear, because the banks push 5 year fixed products because it is their highest profiting item.
Yeah.
So it is in the bank's best interest to offer you that. So, which, when you think of historically, banks have always had the largest market share. You went to your bank to get a mortgage. It made sense. When I started in the industry 8 years ago, we were about 24% market share, I believe. So only 24 out of every 100 mortgages originated from a mortgage broker. We're approaching almost 1 in 2 now.
Yeah.
So you're starting to see advice that's coming from someone who's working in your best interest as opposed to the banks. So I think that's why people are hearing a lot more about variable rate mortgages, because they're getting advice from people who are working for them as opposed to the bank.
Yeah, no, I mean, the market again is very different in the States. In the States, you have a lot more brokers being used, and therefore a lot of more variable mortgages being used in the States. Whereas in Canada, I think variable is a recent phenomenon.
I recently went to the States. I did a conference down there with Gary Vee. It was so great. But on
Oh,
my
nice.
way, I was fortunate. I sat with an underwriter from one of the banks on the plane. And there, I said, when you have a 30-year mortgage, is it actually the same rate for 30 years? And she said, yes, that's why we always lean towards fixed. And I said, well, what are the penalties like that? And they said they don't charge penalties. She said it's
Yeah,
in the fine print, but they don't ever actually enforce them. So if you locked in at a fixed rate today and then rates dropped in 2 years, you just refinance. It's not a problem. But with Canadians, that's not how our institutions run. So we have more factors to consider. So again, just because they're
yeah,
recommending it in the States doesn't mean it's always the same.
yeah. No,
Yeah.
it's very different markets, and people. That's why I say you got to go to a mortgage broker to understand, and not like believe everything you read in the newspaper.
Exactly, exactly. And I think too, um, just it goes back to working with professionals you trust, because like in any
Yeah,
industry, you're going to find someone that you really click with and that's going to listen to your needs, just like working with a lawyer who's really going to advise you. I've seen lawyers last minute make advice on a property that probably saved people from entering into a complete money pit. We
yeah.
had one that just really saved the day by reading the condo documents, and noticing a gap, and I think really saved that client from entering into a big financial distress
Oh wow.
situation. So it's just about working with professionals you trust and having a team that's on your side to ensure you're doing the best for you.
Awesome. Great advice. Thank you for coming on the podcast. Really appreciate it. Any last words? I think that was a great way to end it off. But if you got any last words, now's the time.
No, I just don't be afraid of real estate right now. It is the best opportunity. Millionaires were made in down markets, and it is a great
100%.
opportunity right now.
100%. I agree. I couldn't agree more. If anyone who's listening wants to reach out to Katherine, depending on where you're listening, either her contact information is going to be on the side or below. Reach out, start that conversation. Whether it's your first home or your repeat buyer, it's always good to start getting to know your options. Thank you for coming on the podcast, Katherine.
Awesome. Thank you for having me.